Tonight, we're exploring popular survival tips that would actually get you killed. A fire crackles softly in your imagination. Not the roaring bonfire of triumph, just a shy flicker in the middle of nowhere. The kind of flame you've seen in old movies or stories, conjured with nothing but patience, friction, and dry twigs. You picture yourself crouched beside it, your breath visible in the cold air, hands outstretched. The wilderness around you quiets. The worst, you think, must be behind you. But the truth is softer and stranger. You probably won't survive this world unchanged, but that's the point. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. And if you're still awake, tell me your local time and where you're listening from. I'd love to know who's out there in the dark with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The fire doesn't start right away. Your fingers are sore, raw from rubbing sticks together like you saw in that old guidebook. Sparks tease you, but vanish before taking root. Finally, a curl of smoke, then a tiny flame, a fragile heartbeat in the cold dusk. You lean close. It's alive. But here's the strange part no one tells you. This victory might kill you. In freezing conditions, your body loses heat faster than it can produce. You stop moving to build that fire. You hunch down, focused on coaxing life from dead twigs. And while your hands are busy, your core temperature quietly drops. Fire building isn't just slow, it stalls your survival clock. This isn't theory. In multiple studies of cold exposure cases, especially among solo hikers, hypothermia often began not during exposure, but during effort. While lighting fires, while resting beside them, while feeling safe. You see, fire gives the illusion of warmth long before it truly delivers it. The skin feels toasty, but the core stays cold. The contrast can confuse the brain, masking early hypothermia. There's an eerie detail hidden in Arctic survival training. In extreme cold, some instructors teach to keep walking, even after nightfall, instead of stopping to build a fire. Movement preserves heat, stillness drains it. And still, there's something primal about flame. It seduces with flickers and glow, inviting memories of safety, of stories passed in the orange light. Maybe that's why we trust it too easily. Fire is ancient. Fire is home. But in survival, comfort can become camouflage. Imagine this. You spend your final energy lighting that fire. You collapse beside it, thinking you've made it. You fall asleep and don't wake up, because your body, lulled by false warmth, slipped too far. Not dramatic, just quiet, just cold. One quietly fascinating fact. Your brain's hypothalamus, the part that regulates body temperature, begins to fail when you lose just 2 degrees Celsius of core heat. Decision-making falters. You might not even realize you're in danger. You forget things. Stop feeling afraid. Some victims of hypothermia have been found naked. They felt so hot, they undressed in the snow. It's called paradoxical undressing. And fire, oddly enough, can worsen that delusion. It glows. It reassures. But it doesn't restore core heat fast enough to save you if you're already slipping. Some researchers wonder if our deep trust in fire comes not from logic, but from evolutionary storytelling. That it's wired into us, not as fact, but myth, passed down like lullabies rather than warnings. You stare at the flame you made. It dances. It tells you, you're safe now. But what if survival is more about movement than mastery? More about resisting the comfort of small victories? The fire might not be the ending you hoped for. It might be a pause and a trap. And still, you can't help but feel proud, even knowing the risk. Because in the silence of the woods, in the hush of snow or shadow, there's a kind of magic to making light, even if it's only for a little while. Even if it lies to you. You step away from the fading fire, its warmth trailing behind like a memory that doesn't follow. The night air greets your skin with a gentle bite, and your legs move almost on instinct. Searching for shelter now, not just warmth. You're tired, not just in your muscles, but deeper, as if even your thoughts are starting to curl inward, looking for somewhere soft to hide. There's a promise in finding shelter. A cave, a burrow, a makeshift roof beneath the trees. The idea that if you can just cover yourself up, the danger will pass like a storm. You spot a rock overhang, just wide enough to crawl under, its mouth dark and dry. Or maybe a snow hollow, freshly scooped, womb-like, silent. And it feels right, ancient. Like this is how people survived before tools, before maps, before warnings written in bold. But this too can kill you. The truth is, many natural shelters hold quiet risks you don't see until too late. Rocks shift, cold gathers, air thins, and not all stillness is safety. In cold conditions, snow shelters like quinzees and caves can offer insulation, but only when crafted with experience. A snow hollow too thin can collapse. One too deep can trap carbon dioxide from your breath. People have slipped into sleep and never woken, not from cold, but from air that stopped circulating. There's a term some wilderness guides whisper like superstition: white tombs. They're the snow caves built hastily, the ones that look warm but lack vents, where silence thickens until there's no breath left to make fog on the ceiling. Even dry caves, rocky, ancient places, can deceive. Caves hold cold like memory. The stone never warms, not really. Lie down against it, and your body begins to donate heat to something older, unmoving. Worse, caves can concentrate moisture. In a damp, airless crevice, condensation clings to skin and fabric. You don't feel it at first, it's gradual, but slowly, your layers lose their warmth. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. Humans lose more heat through conduction than through exposure. That means what touches your skin, cold ground, wet air, stone, steals your warmth faster than the air around you. A dry wind may feel cruel, but sleeping directly on frozen soil is far more dangerous. You might think of curling up, wrapping yourself tightly in leaves or grass, nestling into the snow like a creature of instinct. And it works. For animals. They evolved for this. Their bodies know how to slow, how to regulate. Ours just fade. And yet there's comfort in small spaces. You squeeze into your chosen shelter and feel safer. Maybe it's psychological. Our species evolved in close places: wombs, huts, tents, dens. So when the night is wide and filled with unknowns, smallness feels like control. But here's the eerie detail. Some survival cases suggest that these false shelters can actually delay rescue. A hiker disappears. Search teams fan out, but because the person crawled under a ledge or into a hollow, they're missed. Hidden not just from danger, but from help. Researchers still debate this instinct, this need to hide. Is it evolutionary? Emotional? Some argue it's primal fear. Others suggest it's a misfire, our brains mistaking stillness for safety, even when it isn't. You lie there, breathing shallowly. Your shelter is quiet, still. The outside world muffled to a hush. But something doesn't sit right. Maybe it's the way the roof curves so close to your chest, or the scent of damp earth, too still to feel clean, or the fact that the cold hasn't really left, it's just watching. You remember the old survival saying, you lose heat to the earth, always insulate underneath, not just above. And you realize now, you didn't. The ground beneath you is leaching something. Not pain, not discomfort, something subtler. Your will to move. And that's the danger. When a shelter turns into a cradle, you start to imagine staying forever. There's a term in mountaineering, the temptation to stop. It's a soft kind of death, not dramatic, just peaceful. You find shelter, you sit, you sleep, you don't wake. But tonight, you're still awake, listening, wondering. You shift slightly, testing the stiffness in your limbs. You feel the ache behind your eyes, the whisper of fatigue. You think about getting up, about pushing forward. The shelter sighs around you, as if to say rest, just a little longer. But maybe survival is less about where you stop, and more about knowing when to leave. Because not all homes are safe, and not all stillness means survival. You leave the hollow behind, dragging the cold with you like a second skin. It clings to the backs of your knees, to your breath. The night isn't darker than before, but it feels heavier now, like it's pressing inward. Every step crunches faintly, a small announcement in the quiet. You keep moving, slowly, carefully. You're thinking about water now. Thirst blooms not as panic, but as pressure behind the eyes, in the throat. Not yet urgent, but insistent. You remember the advice, always find water. You've heard it a dozen times. Prioritize hydration. Without it, even the strongest don't last long. And there, up ahead, a glimmer. Just a faint shimmer between trees. A stream, maybe, or a shallow pond. It reflects the moon like a signal, as if saying, yes, I'm what you've been looking for. You kneel beside it. The water looks clean, clear. You can even see the soft of shadows beneath the surface. Leaves, maybe. Or fish. You dip a hand in. Cold bites your fingers, but it feels right. You're about to drink. But here's the thing. Clear doesn't mean clean. And in the wilderness, the most dangerous water is often the one that looks the safest. Still ponds, slow streams, they become homes to microscopic threats, invisible ones. Giardia lamblia, Cryptosporidium, tiny parasites that won't scream or bite or alert you in any way. They just wait, suspended in the quiet like stars that don't shine. And when you drink, they enter. Not fast, not loud, just a subtle sabotage. You won't feel it immediately. That's the eerie part. The water may even taste fresh, cool, like victory. But days later, the body begins to crumble. Dehydration from within, vomiting, fever, confusion. And in a survival situation, those symptoms aren't minor inconveniences, they're death by delay. One quietly fascinating fact, some of the most remote wildernesses, even icy, pristine-looking alpine regions, test positive for Giardia in up to 97% of open water sources. It's not dirt that kills, it's life you can't see. And here's a strange thing to consider. Thirst messes with the brain. It alters perception. Studies show that dehydration shrinks brain tissue, literally changing the way we process judgment. You're not just thirsty, you're impaired. You think, it looks safe. What's the worst that could happen? But survival isn't a story about what you want to be true. It's about what already is. There are other dangers too, not just parasites. In the far north, you might find water that's acidic from volcanic runoff. In marshy areas, bacteria thrive. Even snowmelt, if it's run over soil or dead vegetation, can carry pathogens. The cold doesn't kill everything, and yet, the body pleads. Your mouth is dry, your thoughts are slowing. You want to believe in the myth of pure mountain streams. You want to believe in natural meaning safe. But nature isn't moral, it's not malicious either, just indifferent. You sit for a moment beside the water considering. There are ways to purify, boiling, tablets, filters. But if you don't have those, you're stuck with choice between slow dehydration or invisible risk. Some survival experts recommend this strange trick. Instead of drinking deeply all at once, take small sips, hold them in your mouth. Let your body absorb through mucous membranes. Delay the swallowing. Delay the gamble. It's not a cure, but it's something. And in that moment, you realize survival is full of these quiet calculations, half measures, risks you don't celebrate, only endure. Researchers still debate how early humans balanced this. Some believe they developed an internal taste test, a chemical sensitivity to tainted water. Others suggest rituals, testing first with animals, or waiting for signs. But in modern survival, you're mostly alone with instinct. And instinct doesn't always know microbes. You touch the surface of the water again, trailing your fingers. It's so still, it doesn't feel dangerous. But that's the illusion. You may drink, you may not. Either way, the danger isn't loud, it's waiting. Not all threats come with fangs or storms. Some move slow, inside you, invisible and patient. So you rise just a little weaker than before. You leave the water shimmering behind you, like a memory that didn't taste quite right. And in your throat, thirst lingers, not stronger but smarter. You move along the edge of the water now, letting it guide your steps. It seems to stretch endlessly through the forest, like a silver ribbon laid across the land, curving gently into the trees. It feels right to follow it. You remember reading once, follow the river downstream, and it will lead to people, civilization, roads, rescue. The logic feels comforting. Water flows to life, doesn't it? Towns are built beside rivers. Animals drink here. Surely it must be true. So you walk, and the river walks with you. But this path, like the others, carries its own soft betrayal. Because rivers don't always lead out. Sometimes they spiral deeper in. You think you're heading toward safety, but the terrain tightens. Rocks slip beneath your feet. The forest grows thicker, knotting the banks with roots and shadows. You lose track of direction. The sky disappears behind pine and fog. The current speeds up, but the land around it slows you. And you realize something. You're being pulled not just by the river's course, but by your trust in the idea that rivers save. One quietly fascinating fact. In many survival case studies, lost hikers who follow rivers are found farther from civilization than those who stayed put. Rivers don't follow roads. They cut through gorges, canyons, remote valleys. And what's downstream might not be safety. It might be cliffs, rapids, even the ocean. There's an eerie detail in the geography of loss. Some bodies are found only after drifting miles, not because the person fell in, but because they tried to follow the river too closely. Slipped, sank, disappeared. Water erases footprints quickly. And even when you stay dry, the river can confuse. It twists and winds, creating the illusion of progress when you're really circling. Psychologists call it false linearity. The brains need to believe that forward motion equals getting closer. But rivers, especially in wild terrain, curve back on themselves like serpents. What feels like north is sometimes south. What feels like salvation is sometimes a loop. You step over a fallen log, trailing the same current. The sound of water keeps you company, gentle gurgles, the occasional splash. You feel less alone, but the river doesn't care. It flows because it must, not for you. And here's something else. The banks are rarely the easiest path. You keep climbing, sliding, dodging overgrowth. It costs energy, calories. You burn more than you save, and all for a promise the river never made. Researchers still wonder why humans place so much trust in water as a guide. Is it cultural memory? Some ancient story echoing through time? Or is it simply hope wearing the mask of direction? You pause by a bend in the stream. The moonlight catches in the eddies. There's something hypnotic about it. The way it turns, never stopping. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't make choices. It just goes. And for a moment, you feel envious of that, of something that always knows where it's heading, even if it never truly arrives. You take a few more steps. Your foot slips on a mossy stone. You catch yourself. But your heart beats faster now. A reminder, the river isn't a road. It's a current, and it doesn't always wait. You wonder then, if the safest path isn't beside the river, but above it, watching, listening, but never trusting too much. Because in survival, forward is not always freedom, and movement, when blind, becomes its own trap. Still, you walk. Because the mind needs momentum. Because silence is heavier when standing still. Because even knowing better, part of you believes in the river, believes it might still remember the way home. You pause at a bend in the river, where it widens into a lazy pool and then narrows again, sliding into the trees like a whispered invitation. The water still looks clean, gentle, harmless. But you're not thinking about water anymore. Not really. You're thinking about hunger. It hasn't shouted yet, just a low thrum behind your ribs, a little weakness in your knees, a faint hollowing, the kind that starts to bend your thoughts around food. You try to remember the advice. Eat what the animals eat. It makes sense. They've lived here longer than you. They know what's safe. You spot a squirrel high in a tree, paws wrapped around something small, maybe a nut, maybe a berry. Your eyes drop to the underbrush, a patch of berries, dark, round, gleaming like tiny ornaments in the green. They look familiar, edible. And something in you begins to lean toward trust, in instinct, in the squirrel's choice, in the logic that if it eats them, so can I. But the forest has always been better at deception than clarity. The truth, what animals eat might kill you. Squirrels, birds, deer, their bodies process toxins we can't. Some species evolved enzymes that break down compounds like hydrogen cyanide, oxalates, alkaloids. These defenses protect the plant, but not from creatures adapted to them. You're not one of those creatures. One quietly fascinating fact, humans have lost more than 2/3 of our bitter detection genes over the last 10,000 years. In ancient times, bitterness signaled poison. Now we hardly taste the warning. And those berries, they might be pokeweed, or baneberries, or deadly nightshade. Some cause vomiting, others heart failure. Some numb the tongue before shutting down the lungs. And the worst part, many taste sweet, innocent, even pleasant. You stare at the plant, trying to recall diagrams, old foraging guides, the color of the stem, the shape of the leaf. But in the field, memory blurs. Green looks like green. Hunger paints over hesitation. There's an eerie detail from wilderness rescues. Many poisoned hikers were found with foraging guides still in hand, open to the right page. Knowing isn't always enough. Even nuts can betray. Raw acorns contain tannins that upset digestion. Wild almonds may carry cyanide. The wrong root, mistaken for something edible, can turn the body against itself in hours. And yet, animals eat them, thrive on them, because they were born to. You were born to ask questions instead. Survival instructors sometimes teach this slow method called the universal edibility test, where you separate a plant into parts, rub it on your skin, wait, then lips, then tongue, in stages. Each step takes hours. Safe? Maybe. Practical in real life? Rarely. Hunger doesn't wait that long. And the wild doesn't either. You pass by the berries. Let the squirrel keep its secret. You find a patch of cattails near the edge of a stream, tall, fuzzy stalks like brown candles. They're known as supermarket of the swamp. Roots can be edible. Stems too. But you pause. Because now you know, Even the safe things can hurt if taken wrong. The roots must be cooked. The water they grow in might be tainted. And so, hunger becomes a quiet war of trade-offs. You might eat and fall ill. You might starve slowly instead. Researchers still debate how early humans managed this balancing act. Some say trial and error shaped our ancestors' diets, a lineage of quiet, painful mistakes. Others argue that deep oral traditions, elders, rituals, taboos, once taught survival that can't be passed down in books. And you're alone now. No elder, no story, just choices. You find a few dried pine nuts still in their shell. They're bitter, but safe, probably. You chew slowly, not because you want to savor them, but because there's nothing else to do. Your body wants to believe it will be fed again, that this is just a pause, not a pattern. As you chew, you think about how hunger changes the world. The forest doesn't look the same anymore. Every shadow becomes a shape. Every bush becomes a maybe. Your eyes scan for mushrooms, insects, anything. You consider peeling bark, eating ants. It's not fear that drives you. It's a kind of sharpening. A narrowing of focus. The body's gentle alarm, but the mind stays soft, slow. You remember now that even insects in some regions carry their own risks. Toxins, bacteria, chitin that upsets digestion when taken in excess. So you ration the pine nuts. 3, then 2, then 1. You let your hunger walk beside you now, not ahead, like a quiet companion who says nothing, but never leaves. The forest is still, somewhere far away. A bird calls once, then stops. And in your stomach, something folds in on itself. Not panic, just knowing. Not all food is for you, and not all hunger is meant to be fed. The forest deepens, and your hunger settles into the background. A constant presence, but quieter now, like a tide that's pulled back just enough for you to move again. What rises instead is a more human longing. To be found, to be seen. You start thinking of rescue, of the warmth in another voice. A hand, a promise that this doesn't go on forever. You remember what they say in survival books. You've heard it on nature shows, in safety briefings. If you're lost, stay put. Let help come to you. So you stop walking. You find a spot beneath a low tree, shielded from wind and open sky. You clear a patch of ground with your foot. Sit down slowly, rest your back against the trunk. The silence grows larger, and you wait. Because staying put means you'll be easier to find, right? It's what they told you. But not all advice holds when the trees close in. Here's the quiet truth. Stay put works only if someone knows you're missing, and where you were last seen. If no one's looking, staying still might just mean disappearing more quietly. One quietly fascinating fact: studies on lost person behavior show that children tend to stay put, while adults keep moving. And ironically, both instincts can fail depending on the terrain. In dense forests, motion can lead to panic loops. But stillness can lead to death by exposure. It's a question of timing, of knowing the difference between patience and paralysis. But how do you know when no one's coming? There's an eerie detail from many search and rescue logs. Some victims were found just over a ridge from safety, a mile from a trail, a few hundred feet from a cabin. But they stayed put, waiting for voices that never came. And those waiting hours turned fatal. You sit beneath the tree, trying to listen. For helicopters, dogs, voices, even a distant whistle. But the forest offers no confirmation. Just wind threading through branches. Just your own breath. Time begins to stretch strangely. You check the sky. The shadows haven't shifted much. Minutes feel like hours. Your body grows heavier. The bark presses into your back. You shift, stand, then sit again. Waiting becomes its own kind of tension. You imagine someone tracing your path, then turning one step too early, missing you by 50 feet. That thought loops again and again. And still, you wait. There's something oddly comforting about it. Like surrender, like trusting the world will remember you. But the world isn't always watching. Researchers still debate the psychological weight of learned helplessness, the moment when humans stop acting, not out of strategy, but despair. When staying put is no longer a choice, but a resignation. You don't feel that way, not yet, but the stillness tugs at you. You try to focus, to stay alert, but your mind drifts. You think about the first people who got lost, not just in woods, but in deserts, on mountains, at sea, before GPS, before compasses. What did they wait for? A star? A bird? A sound? Or did they just listen, like you, for something more human? The call of their own name? You whisper yours, just once into the trees. It vanishes before it finishes. And in that moment, you realize that stay put is less about geography and more about belief. You stay because you believe someone is coming. But belief, like warmth, fades. So you rise again, not out of panic, but gentle resolve. You mark the tree where you sat, a break in the rhythm of your trail in case you circle back. You step away slowly, carefully, noting each direction. Because movement now is no longer fear, it's curiosity. What if the trail is just over the next rise? What if you don't wait to be found, but choose to find? And maybe that's what survival really is. Not waiting for rescue, but deciding what comes next. The forest doesn't notice, but you do. You keep walking, not fast, just forward. You walk without urgency now, not out of confidence, but because rushing has no use here. The forest is thick with repetition. Trunks that look the same, branches that catch at your sleeves, but your eyes search for signs, for patterns. You're trying to find your direction, and then you see it, moss. It coats the base of a tree like velvet in the shadows, pale green, soft, spreading in a quiet half moon up the bark. You remember what people always say, moss grows on the north side of trees. A natural compass, ancient wisdom. You smile a little. Maybe this will help. So you start checking other trees, but something's not right, because the next one has moss on the east side, another on the west. One is almost entirely wrapped in it. Your sense of direction, already fragile, begins to tilt, and you realize the moss myth isn't quite what they told you. Here's the quietly fascinating fact. Moss grows where it's moist. Heck, not where it's north. That often is the north side, especially in open, sunlit forests of the northern hemisphere, but not always. In deep woods where light filters from all directions, moisture becomes unpredictable. Streams, wind, fog, and shade play their own quiet games. So if you follow moss blindly, you may not be going north at all. You might be spiraling again, heading into lowlands, into thickets, into confusion. There's a strange, eerie detail from search and rescue accounts. Some lost hikers followed moss patterns into ravines, thinking they were heading north, and became trapped. They trusted the green fuzz on bark more than their own growing uncertainty. You stop and breathe. It's easy to believe in natural signs. There's something poetic in them, the idea that the forest leaves you clues if you just look closely enough. But nature doesn't write instructions. It leaves patterns. And those patterns don't always align with what you learned in a book. There are other myths, too. You think about how people say you can find direction by the sun, by the stars, by the way ants build their hills. Some are partly true, in very specific conditions. But the moment you move through valleys, under clouds, through dense canopy, those truths dissolve. Researchers still argue whether natural wayfinding is reliable at all. Some believe our ancestors read the landscape like language, subtle signs in soil, trees, wind. Others think those stories are half memories, shaped more by repetition than accuracy. You touch the moss. It's soft, damp from earlier rain. Beautiful, really, like the forest is wearing a blanket, but it won't guide you, not safely. So you let go of the idea that the trees will show you the way, and something shifts in you. Not defeat, just clarity. That the forest is not trying to help you or hurt you. It simply is, a collection of living things, doing what they do. Moss growing where it's wet, birds nesting where it's quiet, nothing personal, nothing mythic, just life. You pause to listen, and there it is again, the wind, barely more than a sigh threading through from one side, consistent. A push of air, perhaps from a clearing. You decide to follow that instead. Not because it's a rule in a book, but because it's real in this moment. You step past the moss-covered tree. The green fades behind you, and in your chest, a strange calm opens. You're no longer trying to decode the forest. You're just walking with it. Sometimes the most dangerous ideas are the ones we never question, the ones wrapped in quiet confidence. But survival asks you to unlearn, to notice, not assume, to touch the moss and keep moving anyway. The wind guides you now, soft, rhythmic, almost like breath. You move through tall ferns and hanging branches, your pace slow but steady. The cold lingers on your skin, settling in places your body has stopped trying to warm. Your fingers, the backs of your arms, the hollow of your spine. You start thinking about heat again. Real heat. Not the kind that flickers for a moment and dies. Not illusion. Not memory. You want warmth that stays. And then, as if summoned by the thought, you see it. A glow. It doesn't pulse like fire. It doesn't dance. It simply rests in the landscape, low, steady, orange against the dark. You feel it before you reach it. that radiant pull. It's warmth. But the deeper part of you, the part that's still cautious, whispers something else. Too easy. You draw closer. It's not a fire, not exactly. It's a vent, bubbling heat from the earth, a crack in the rocks, breathing steam into the night. You've read about places like this. Geothermal springs, volcanic soil, natural vents in tectonic zones. They can save your life. They can also end it. Because warmth, like everything else out here, carries two faces. You crouch beside it. The air near the vent is warm and damp. It makes you exhale in surprise. You want to sit, to sleep, to let your body sink into this unexpected mercy. But here's the quietly fascinating fact. Many geothermal vents release not just heat, but gases. Carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, invisible. Heavier than air. These gases can settle in low spots, pushing out oxygen. People resting too close have passed out without warning. Some never wake. The eerie detail? Your body doesn't warn you. There's no smell in high enough concentrations. No burning in the lungs. Just sleep. Fast, deep, permanent. There are places in the world, even today, where animals and people avoid certain warm hollows, not because they look wrong, but because they feel too peaceful. Locals call them sleeping grounds. The kind of places where birds don't sing, where insects go still. You rise slightly, just enough to keep your head above the warm mist. And then you step back. Not far. Just enough to feel the line between comfort and caution. Warmth can disarm you. It quiets the brain. In cold conditions, even the illusion of it causes physiological shifts. Your body stops producing heat of its own. It assumes you're safe. That's the danger. There's another heat trap too, chemical fires. In desperation, some survivors burn plastic, treated wood, wet foliage, anything that catches. These fires produce heat, yes, but also toxins, chlorine gas, dioxins, carbon monoxide. In an enclosed shelter, the risk multiplies. People have died not from exposure, but from their own fire's breath. You think about mirages, too. Heat rising from rocks during the day, bending light into false promise. In deserts, those illusions shimmer like lakes. In forests, they're more subtle. Just a sense of wrong direction, a pull that doesn't explain itself. Researchers still study these perceptual tricks, how the brain under stress misreads heat as direction. It's not just hallucination, it's selective focus. You believe the heat must mean safety, so you go toward it. But safety and survival don't always align. You stand now, letting the warmth touch your hands but not your mind. You won't stay long, because you understand it now, that too much comfort is as dangerous as none at all. It dulls your instincts, lulls your judgment, makes you believe in endings when the path is still unfolding. So you thank the vent, quietly, almost ceremonially, and turn away. Not because it betrayed you, but because it tempted you to stop. And stopping out here can be the softest death. The forest is cool again, but you keep walking, not to escape the cold, but to carry your warmth with you. You follow the trail of your breath now, visible in the cool air, a soft puff ahead of each step. The forest has narrowed into a hush. No breeze, no birds, just the crunch of your footfalls and the slow rhythm of your lungs. You're far from where you started, far from anything, really. That's when you feel it, the urge to call out, to yell your name, to shout help. It rises not from panic, but from instinct. A part of you wants to be heard, wants to break the silence like a window. You stop, look around, no movement, just the weight of trees. You take a breath and prepare to call. But the sound dies in your throat, because something deeper, quieter, is unsure. What if no one hears you? What if something does? You've been told before, if you're lost, make noise, scream, bang rocks, draw attention. It seems logical. Sound carries, sound connects, sound means survival, but it's not always true. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. In dense forests, especially damp or uneven terrain, sound travels poorly. Trees absorb it, branches break it, sound waves scatter in unpredictable directions. A shout that seems loud to you might barely echo 100 feet away. There's an eerie detail shared in survival training. Sometimes, calling out can disorient you more. You expect a response. When none comes, your brain twists in the silence. Doubt creeps in. Direction blurs. You begin shouting louder. Turning in circles. Burning energy you can't spare. And even worse, shouting can draw attention you don't want. Not all forests are empty. There are animals, large ones, that interpret sound as threat or challenge. In some places, sound might invite investigation. Curious eyes, paws, teeth. Even humans in certain regions learn caution. In stories passed down between quiet communities, you'll hear, "Don't make noise at night in the woods." You don't always know who's listening. You stand still now, heart settling, and you try something different. Instead of yelling, you listen, carefully, not just for rescue, but for rhythm, patterns. A break in silence, a voice other than your own. There's nothing. And that, too, tells you something. You whisper instead, not for help, just to hear yourself, to feel the air move. A breath, a word. It's enough. Survival often favors the quiet. Whistles, high-pitched and sharp, carry farther than shouts. But even those are limited in places like this. A canyon echoes. A forest swallows. You remember reading that a whisper travels better in some dense places because it doesn't bounce. It glides. Researchers have studied this strange phenomenon. In certain dense bamboo groves in Asia, monks communicate across long distances using soft calls, not loud ones. The loudness breaks the harmony of space. The soft calls blend. You walk on, resisting the urge to shout. You hum instead, a small sound, just enough to remind you you're still here, still part of something. And maybe that's the lesson. The forest doesn't respond to panic, but it listens to presence. And you, walking softly, breathing steady, mind attuned to everything you don't say, you begin to feel something close to peace. Not safety, but closeness. Stillness doesn't mean isolation. Silence isn't emptiness. Sometimes it's the best companion you'll have. And if someone is looking for you, they won't find you through screaming. They'll find your footprints, your trail markers, the care you took not to vanish completely. So you keep walking, not in silence, but with it. And it walks with you. Like a friend who never interrupts. The trees begin to change now, subtly, but enough that you notice. The trunks grow farther apart. The canopy thins, light seeps through in soft golden ribbons. You pass between the pillars of tall pines and birch, your footsteps cushioned by years of fallen needles. You breathe deeper. The air feels different here, less damp, more open. You wonder, just briefly, if you're nearing the edge of something. Civilization, a trail, a cabin. But another thought slips in, gentle and tempting. Maybe you should climb a tree. It's one of those pieces of survival lore that almost everyone hears once. Climb high to get your bearings. See the land. Find the sun. Spot the river, the road, the roof of safety somewhere beyond the trees. You run your hand along a sturdy trunk. It's tall, straight, maybe 30 feet or more before the branches start to spread wide. And from up there, if you could reach it, maybe the forest would unfold like a map. But here's the quiet danger. Climbing can kill. Not always from the fall, though that too is real. It's from what climbing costs. One quietly fascinating fact. In a survival situation, vertical movement burns significantly more calories than horizontal, especially when underfed or dehydrated. You expend precious energy pulling your own weight against gravity, and the return is often nothing. Because even from the treetops, the forest remains deceptive. What you see is not a map. It's a sea of green, an unbroken stretch of canopy, indistinct and disorienting. Without landmarks, your brain struggles to orient. You may think you're facing north, but the sun lies too. In late afternoon, it can hang westward like a false guide. And then there's the wind. At ground level, it's a whisper. Above the trees, it bites. There's an eerie detail buried in park records. More than a few rescues became recoveries because a person tried to climb just a little higher and a dead branch broke. No cry for help. No warning. Just a quiet shift, then stillness below. You press your palm to the bark again. Rough, cold, unyielding. You imagine the ascent, the scrape of bark under your hands, the tremble in your legs, the strain in muscles already worn thin. You think of what might meet you at the top. Not clarity, but wind. Vertigo. The hard truth of still not knowing. Researchers still argue whether humans retain an ancient arboreal instinct, a leftover from when our ancestors lived among the branches. Is that why children still love to climb? Is that why we believe the high ground means understanding? Maybe. But survival favors realism over instinct. And the truth is, the higher you go, the harder it is to come back down, especially if your grip fails or your judgment fades with fatigue. You step away from the tree. It's still beautiful, still proud, but it doesn't hold the answer you wanted. Instead, you scan the ground, look for indirect signs, tracks, broken twigs, shifts in the underbrush. You spot a narrow game trail, not much, just a subtle flattening of grass, a whisper of passage. You follow it. Because the earth is honest. Climbing shows you where you are. but walking gets you somewhere else. Still, you glance upward one more time. And in the wind-blown tops of the trees, you hear not a promise, but a warning. Don't go higher than your body can return from. Don't chase sight when what you need is direction. So you keep walking, on the ground, where the answers come slower, but steadier. The forest floor dips gently now, rolling into a shallow valley where mist gathers near the roots. You descend with careful steps, letting your weight move low and even, as if trying not to disturb the hush that's settled here. Your legs are sore, not with sharp pain, but with that slow, pulling ache that comes from long use and little rest. Your thoughts move slower too, like water thickening in the cold. You think, maybe it's time to rest again. Not for long, just a moment. And then another survival thought drifts in, one you've probably heard before. Sleep when your body tells you to. Trust it. You smile faintly at how gentle that sounds. Listen. The body knows, right? But out here, sleep isn't always the gift you expect. It can be a trick, because what your body wants may be the very thing it can't survive. Here's a quietly fascinating fact. The colder your body gets, the more it craves sleep, even though sleep in cold conditions can speed up hypothermia. Your brain begins to interpret cold not as discomfort, but as drowsiness. Your eyelids feel heavy, your thoughts blur, you think, just 5 minutes. And sometimes 5 minutes is all it takes. You crouch beside a tree, feeling the damp earth pull at your knees. It's quiet. Still, you could just lean, but you don't, because there's an eerie detail in how cold kills. Hypothermia mimics comfort at the edge. People begin to feel warm as their core temperature drops. They strip off clothes, smile, lie down, close their eyes. It's called paradoxical undressing. Search teams sometimes find bodies curled in the snow, clothes discarded nearby, not from panic, but from that final false heat. You stand again, not from fear, just awareness. Sleep is sacred, yes, but in the wild, it must be earned. You look for a better place to pause. Dry, elevated, protected from wind. You gather a few fallen branches, layer pine needles, create a soft boundary between you and the earth. Because the ground steals heat faster than air, that quiet thief again, working from below. You sit cross-legged. Try to settle without sinking. And here's the challenge: resting without falling. The line between micronap and slipping under for hours is thin. Out here, even a few degrees of lost body heat can shift your chances. Researchers debate the concept of controlled sleep in survival. Some advocate for brief, timed rests. Others warn that once the body surrenders, it doesn't always wake with strength. Fatigue is not just physical, it's chemical, hormonal. It changes your risk assessment, your memory, your ability to choose wisely. Still, you need something. You close your eyes, not fully, just enough to listen inward. You let your breath deepen. You count it. 5 in, 5 out. You let your muscles sag but not collapse. You imagine warmth, a small fire, a shelter you might build later. And you stay like that. Not asleep, not alert, but resting with awareness. There's a moment, maybe just one, when your mind drifts far enough that you forget where you are. And then a breeze brings you back. You open your eyes. Nothing has changed, but everything feels slightly clearer. That's enough for now. You rise, you stretch gently. Feel the cold where it touched your skin. It didn't take much, just a few minutes. But you caught it early. That's how survival works, not in grand rescues, but in small, repeated avoidances of danger. You keep moving. And sleep now becomes something you carry forward, not into. You're walking again, a little steadier now. The path, if it can be called that, winds gently uphill. The trees thin just slightly, revealing pieces of sky that feel wider than before. Your breath fogs the air in soft clouds, and you count them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. You've started thinking about shelter. Real shelter. Not just a tree to lean against or a patch of grass to collapse into, but something more structured, something with intention. A place to rest, to survive another night. And in your mind, that old advice stirs. Build a lean-to, something simple, natural. Use what the forest gives you. You stop near a clearing, eyes scanning for branches, bark, broad leaves. The idea sounds soothing, almost creative, like crafting safety from the wild itself. But as your fingers touch the first limb, you hesitate, because you've read the stories, and you know bad shelter can be worse than none at all. Here's the quietly fascinating fact. Poorly built shelters can accelerate hypothermia, trap moisture, collapse in wind, or simply lure false confidence. keeping you in a place when you should have kept moving. People don't just freeze in the open, they freeze inside their own mistakes. There's a strangely eerie detail from cold region rescues. Some victims were found inside fully built shelters, neat, functional looking, but dead. Not from exposure outside, but from trusting the inside too much. They sealed in cold air, they didn't insulate, they lay on wet ground, and they didn't wake up. You look at the branch in your hand, still damp, flexible, but heavy. You imagine trying to stack them, weave them. What would you tie them with? Your shoelaces? Strips of your pack? Shelters take time, and time takes heat. In survival training, there's a saying, 1 hour building is 2 hours lost warmth. You trade movement for construction, but only if the return is real. So you think differently. Not what can I build, but what already exists. You scan the clearing again. A fallen log, hollow and dry. A rock overhang nearby. A stand of tight evergreens forming a natural windbreak. It's not Pinterest-worthy, not the picture in a guidebook, but it might be enough. You gather dry needles, layer them under the log, create distance from the soil, angle fallen branches to direct wind away from your sleeping side. You pull your jacket tight, not for warmth, but to trap what little you have. And that's what shelter really is out here. Not a building, but a boundary. A barrier between you and the things that steal heat, wind, rain, ground, time. You remember another myth. Shelters need fires. But in a cramped, makeshift space, fire can betray. Sparks catch dry pine needles. Smoke fills the gap. Carbon monoxide replaces the air. Small mistakes turn sacred places into traps. Researchers have studied the psychology of false shelters, places that look safe but subtly increase risk. The comfort becomes emotional, not practical. People stay longer than they should, delay better decisions, forget to adapt. You adjust your setup. It's not pretty. It's not even comfortable. But it breathes, it shields, it does the job. You sit beside it for a moment, hands resting in your lap, listening again to the forest. The quiet feels different here, less indifferent. Not warm, but watchful. You feel the first yawn stir in your chest. You let it rise. But you don't lie down yet, because you've learned something vital. Rest is only safe if it respects the land. You press your palm against the wall of the shelter, just once, gently, as if asking permission. And then you rise again, because it's not quite time to sleep. Not yet. But when it is, you'll have a place that understands the cold and won't pretend to cure it. You leave your shelter behind as the light begins to thin. Not quite sunset, but something close. That silvered part of the day where everything loses its edges. The forest feels stretched, quiet in a different way now. Not sleeping, just waiting. Your steps are slower, not from weakness this time, but from thought. Because as night approaches, your attention shifts again to the one element even the best shelters can't always defend against. Predators. You've kept this thought at bay until now. The wild isn't always hostile, but it's not empty either. You've heard the advice before in half-muttered warnings and wilderness guides. Act big, make noise, stand your ground. It sounds brave, commanding, but survival doesn't always reward confidence. Because if you get that moment wrong, if you misread the animal, the terrain, or your own body, it may be your last. Here's the quietly fascinating fact. Many animal encounters become dangerous not from aggression, but from misunderstanding. We misinterpret posture, we panic, we move too fast or not fast enough. And wild creatures already on edge respond in kind. You think about bears, that common nightmare. People say play dead for some, fight back for others. Black bear? Brown bear? Grizzly? Can you tell the difference in the fading light when your breath is loud in your ears? There's an eerie detail recorded in trail journals and ranger notes. Some hikers played dead when they shouldn't, and the bear waited, curious, confused, then leaned in, investigating stillness, and that moment of hesitation ended badly. On the other hand, some stood tall and screamed, and the animal backed off. Others screamed, and the animal didn't, because no rule works every time. Wolves almost never attack humans, but almost never doesn't mean never. Cougars stalk, unseen, for hours. Even smaller creatures, porcupines, badgers, wild dogs, become threats when cornered, starved, or surprised. You stop beside a fallen tree and look around. No tracks, no scat, no movement in the trees. Still, the forest holds its own kind of tension after dark. You feel it in your shoulders, in the way you scan behind you without realizing, in the knowledge that eyes see you before you see them. Researchers studying predator-prey dynamics have found something fascinating. Most wild animals are more afraid of sound than sight, but only if that sound carries meaning. Not just noise, human noise, words, rhythm, songs. Some survivalists hum to themselves after dark, others talk aloud, even to no one, just to signal presence. It keeps both animals in panic at bay. You try it now. A low hum, a single line of a song you barely remember. It feels odd, but it softens something inside you. Not the forest, you. Because fear isn't useful unless it teaches. And panic never teaches anything. You keep moving. You choose a walking stick now, not as a weapon, but as an extension of your reach. To push brush aside, to steady your steps, to knock gently against trees and roots. The soft tapping becomes your second voice. If something is nearby, it knows you're here now. And that's the point. You're not hiding. You're coexisting. You pause again, crouch low and check the dirt, just in case. Still no signs. But you know that not all danger wears tracks. Some simply watches. Still, you walk on, because if the wild has teeth, it also has respect. And survival means giving space and taking only what you must. You whisper that into the dusk, not a prayer, not a plea, just a statement the forest might understand. And then, like breath fading from glass, the tension eases. The dark begins, but you are still here. Still walking, and that matters. Darkness settles slowly, not as a curtain, but as a deepening of shades. The greens turn black, the sky bleeds into charcoal, and your world becomes defined by outlines and movement. You adjust. Your ears sharpen, your eyes search for contrast instead of color. It's time to think about light. You reach for your pack, your pockets, even though you already know what you'll find. A flashlight, maybe. Or maybe nothing. Maybe the battery's gone. Maybe you were never carrying one to begin with. And that's when the old advice resurfaces. If you're in the wild, always make a torch. You picture it now, a long branch wrapped in rags soaked in sap or oil. It flickers in movies, in myths. The flame pushes back the dark. It feels ancient, empowering. You want that. You want a fire in your hand. But what you want and what you need are often different. Here's the quietly fascinating fact. Most DIY torches, the kind made in survival emergencies, don't work well. They burn too fast, or not at all. They drip flame. They blind more than they illuminate. You may get 5 minutes of guttering fire, followed by deeper darkness and the smell of something scorched. And that fire in your hand? It tells everything within a mile. I'm here. I'm tired. I'm unarmed. There's an eerie detail recorded in some survival logs. Several victims were tracked by predators, not when they were silent, but when they carried torches. The movement of flame through brush gave away their exact position. What felt like safety was a beacon. You pause under a tree and sit on your heels, trying to let your night vision adjust. No flame, no light, just the soft silver of starlight peeking through bare gaps above. You notice, gradually, how much you can see. Not clearly, but enough. The outlines of trunks, the texture of bark, the glint of moisture on leaves. Your eyes adapt in about 30 minutes, given darkness. It's something we forget in cities, where the dark is always stained with artificial light. But here, in true night, your pupils expand. Rod cells fire. Your body remembers its ancient way of seeing. There's a calm in this, a surrender to what is. You walk again, slower now, each step tested before it's placed. You use your stick to feel ahead. You listen, not just for threats, but for feedback. Your ears begin to map the space around you, interpreting echoes, the brushing of branches, the hush of wind, and then a sound. Faint, not threat, just water. You tilt your head, a trickle maybe, a stream. You can't see it, but it pulls at your attention. You follow it, carefully, cautiously, because it might lead you to something. Water often means valleys. Valleys mean paths. Paths mean people, or at least direction. You don't need fire right now. You don't need artificial light. You need the dark to do its work. Researchers studying low-light survival often speak of dark familiarity, the moment when a person stops resisting night and starts moving with it. Those who panic in the dark tend to freeze, stumble, get lost. But those who stay still, breathe, wait, tend to find their footing. You're learning that now. Not everything has to be visible. Not everything needs to burn. You keep walking. And the water grows louder. That, too, is a kind of light. A different kind of torch. You follow it. The sound of water becomes more distinct now. No longer just a whisper, but a steady hush, like breath over stone. You follow its rhythm until the trees part slightly, revealing a shallow stream gliding across a bed of smooth rocks. It catches what little starlight there is and breaks it into fragments. You crouch near the bank, letting your hand hover just above the surface. Cold but moving, not stagnant. That's good. You dip your fingers in gently, and there it is. Clarity, simplicity, something ancient. You've been thirsty for a while, but thirst is tricky in survival. You don't always feel it the way you expect. It hides behind fatigue, behind distraction. It whispers instead of demanding. And now you remember what people always say. Drink from a stream if it's flowing. The idea sounds reasonable. Flowing water means clean water. Still water breeds bacteria. Everyone knows that. Except, not quite. Here's the quietly fascinating fact. Moving water looks safe, but it can still carry microscopic threats. Bacteria, protozoa, parasites like Giardia and Cryptosporidium. Waterborne illness is one of the most common dangers after exposure. You might survive the cold, the dark, the hunger, only to be undone by a sip. And the eerie detail? The effects don't show up right away. You may feel fine for hours, even days. And then suddenly, the symptoms begin. Dehydration, cramps, weakness. The very things you can't afford when alone in the wild. You sit back, letting the stream speak for a while. Its music is soft, ancient, deceptive. And yet, what choice do you have? No purifier, no fire to boil it, no tablets or filters. But there are still ways to drink with respect. You choose the clearest, fastest section, where the water tumbles over rock. You avoid spots near vegetation, where decay might collect. You cup your hands and let the water pass through once, then drink slowly, just enough. And as you drink, your thoughts turn to one last common myth. You'll know if water is bad. It will taste wrong. But this, too, is a lie of comfort, because most pathogens carry no taste, no smell, only consequences. Survival asks you to believe in what you can't detect, to weigh risk not by flavor, but by habit, caution, preparation. You rise from the stream and feel the cold again, just slightly sharper now. The stars are out, and through a break in the trees, you finally see them in full, unfiltered, far from cities. They look closer here, sharper, as if they might blink in response to you. You take a few steps away from the stream and begin preparing for sleep. This time you don't seek perfection, just safety, dry ground, natural cover, wind protection. You lie down wrapped in your coat with your shelter's edge breaking the breeze, your stick resting nearby like a quiet companion. And now, as your body finally lets go, you remember the myths for what they really were. Not lies, but fragments. Truths sharpened into slogans, passed from mouth to mouth until they lost their edges. But survival is all about edges, knowing which to lean on, which to stay away from, and which might cut if you're not careful. Your eyes grow heavy now, and this time you welcome it, because your body is warmer, your mind is quieter. The forest, no longer strange, just present. You drift, not away, but into the earth beneath you, the sky above you, the rhythm of your own breath. That's all for tonight. Let your mind keep floating or drift into sleep. I'll be here again next time.